All right, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Boris Hertzlet. I am the program manager for Guam PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. This slide tells you a little bit about what we do. We provide one-on-one counseling services as well as group workshops and webinars like this for companies that are going after government contracts. So if you're going after a local government contract or a federal government contract, we're here to assist. We are funded by a grant from the Defense Logistics Agency, and the University of Guam hosts our program. So we have a couple offices over here at the University of Guam inside the School of Business. So if you want to see us in person, you can come up here. Of course, there's COVID-19 protocols in place, but I am working out of the office. We also have some sponsors of our program. Bank of Guam has given us some office space. So if you want to go see Francine and Frank, they're both over at the Bank of Guam Upper Tumon branch. And then GTA has provided us internet service and some phone service over at the bank, as well as cell phones for our counselors. So you can reach us by those cell phones, as well as our email addresses, and everything is on our website, guamptac.com. We're very accessible. Some of the highlights of our program: we have over 600 active clients. We have about 1,800 clients in our database. Last year, those clients won over $180 million in contracts and subcontracts. And today, that's what we're going to talk about, subcontracting. And we also helped a bunch of clients get HUBZone certified. It's one of the easier federal certifications to get just because it's based on location. It doesn't really care about the ownership of the company too much and any kind of social or economic disadvantage. It only really cares about where your company is located. And all of Guam and all of the CNMI are HUBZone, so it's pretty simple to get that certification. But we can help you with that. It is a process, and we can help you with that process. Some of the partners that we work with, SBA, the Small Business Administration, the HUBZone is one of their programs. They also have some other small business programs, the Woman-Owned Small Business Program, the 8A program. Let's see what else, the Mentor Protege program. So if you're interested in those programs, we can help you with those as well. If you need help with things like grants or all the COVID related loans that will turn into grants if you follow the procedures properly, please go see the folks that were at the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. They're also here at the University School of Business. And go see them, and they can help you with anything related to business development. So if you're starting a business, expanding your business, needing some help with QuickBooks training, financial training, marketing, setting up a website, anything related to developing your business, go see them. That's exactly what they're there for. That's what they do. They're really good at that. We strictly focus, like I mentioned earlier, on government contracting. So our focus is very narrow. We assist with anything related to government contracting, not private sector or anything like that. Let's see, APTAC is the Association of PTAC. So every PTAC has a coverage area. Guam PTAC covers Guam, obviously. There is a CNMI PTAC that covers CNMI. There's about 94, 95 other PTACs across the country. And so we have an association we can go to find out about the newest things that are happening, mostly in federal contracting. Government's local contracting is usually different. States do things differently from state to state and territory to territory. But we can go to our associate and find out what's going on with the latest things related to federal contracting, as well as if there's any issues we're having, like maybe a system like SAM is not working properly, or the wide area workflow invoices aren't getting paid properly. There's some kind of glitch going on. We can present our question to the association, and usually someone will come back with an answer. Say, hey, yeah, I'm experiencing that too. Here's what we did to try to solve it. So that's Guam PTAC. That's what we do. Our services are free of charge. There are no charge for our services. Our webinars are free. Our counseling is free. We can go to your office. You can come to our office. We can do it through Zoom, through email, through phone, whatever you want to, however you want to meet. We're here to help you get those government contracts and subcontracts. All right, I think that basically covers exactly what we do. So today, let's just dive right into it. We're going to talk about subcontracting. Let's start with some definitions first to make sure we're all on the same page, right? And most of these slides will have a link to the FAR, which is the Federal Acquisition Regulation. So we're going to be talking about subcontracting from the point of view of being a federal subcontractor. The Federal Acquisition Regulations, the FAR, that's the Bible of procurement for the federal government. All the rules and regulations are in there. And basically, that's the way the government needs to purchase things following those rules, and vendors need to sell things following those rules. So subcontracting is defined in FAR 44.101, where it basically says any supplier, any distributor, any vendor or firm that furnishes supplies or services to a prime contractor or another subcontractor is a subcontractor, right? So this is basically saying you don't need to have like a written contract in place. For example, let's say, I like to use this example because it came up in some GRT issues a while back, but let's say you're a company is building a building on Anderson, or let's say the new Marine Corps base, and they have a subcontractor who's supplying, I don't know, materials. And then that subcontractor is getting the materials to the base using obviously some kind of trucker. And so they don't really have a contract with that trucker. They just call up a trucker and go, hey man, bring this container from the port over here. Well, that trucker now is a subcontractor, right? They're a subcontractor to the subcontractor because they fit the definition. The big thing with subcontracting, it's a great way to build your past performance. And we're going to talk a little bit about that through the next few slides. What's past performance? Why is it different than experience? Who cares about past performance? But we'll get to that here shortly. But for people who've never been federal contractors, the odds of you just starting off as a prime federal contractor are pretty low. And there's a reason for that, and we're going to get to in the next few slides here. So the best way to break in, to get your foot in the door in federal contracting, is to start as a subcontractor. And the past performance has a lot to do with why it's one of the best ways to do it. So what is past performance? Again, it's defined in the FAR. It's a contractor's performance, an offerer, contractor, vendor, same thing, on active and physically completed contracts. So it's their performance, right? So on the right there, you see the little box with the ratings. Federal contractors get rated. Most rating systems are like this. That's exceptional, very good, satisfactory, marginal. So when they finish a project, or they finish, maybe it's a 5-year service contract and they're finished year 1, they'll have a grade of how they did. Are they meeting the requirements? And they'll get graded. And that was known as past performance, and that gets recorded in a system known as the CPARS, the Contractor Performance Assessment Retrieval System, CPARS. A lot of acronyms in federal contracting, so anytime I say one, I'll try to spell it out for you. It's not the same as experience. A lot of people confuse past performance and experience. So they'll say, if someone says, hey, can you list your past performance? They'll just put a list of all the jobs they've completed. Well, that's your experience. That doesn't really meet the definition, right? Contractor's performance. It says you've done a job, but it doesn't tell anyone how well you've done it. Or there's no rating. There's no nobody knows if you did a good job, if you did the job well, right? So just know experience is what you've done. Past performance is how well you've done it. And the government, not only wants to work with experienced contractors, they want contractors who have good past performance. They want to work with contractors who've had good ratings. Right. Same thing goes with primes. They want subcontractors, the same thing. Because primes are going to follow what the government is doing. So I just wanted to highlight this. There's a difference between past performance and experience. And when we're talking about past performance, we're talking about how well you've done your jobs in the past. Why is it so important? FAR says so. FAR 1.102 basically says they want to make sure the customer, which is the federal government, is satisfied with their cost, quality, and timeliness of whatever product or service or construction is being delivered, right? So they want to use commercial products and services as much as possible, because those have already been vetted. They're used in commercial product is something you can buy off the shelf, basically. And we know it works in the private sector, so there's no need to invent something new for the government sector. And then use contractors with a track record of successful past performance. And that's really the key there, a track record of successful past performance. So does that mean you have to have, some people think, well, how am I supposed to get a track record of successful past performance if I've never been a federal subcontractor before? Well, you can include all your private sector work as your past performance. There are ways to do that, and that counts. I mean, nowhere in the FAR does it say your past performance has to be federal past performance. So, and then of course the government wants to promote competition, right? One of the big things with the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, is they're always trying to get more businesses involved, because the more businesses that are involved selling to the government, that's basic economic theory, the prices will go down, right? If there's only one seller of an item, then you're going to have to pay whatever that seller wants you to pay, right? But if there's 20 sellers of an item, then there's competition and prices can go down. And who pays for everything actually for the government? It's all the taxpayers, right? So it's better for the economy, it's better for the taxpayers, better for the country. All right. Again, why is past performance so important? Again, in FAR, it's basically one of the 7 general standards. This is in FAR 9.104. So when their government is looking at contractors that they think are responsible and trying to make sure that they can do these jobs, of course, they look at the financial resources. They will make sure that the companies can do the schedule perform as scheduled. And they also look at the performance record, right? It's number 3 on the list here. So it's very high up there. That's a very big part, past performance. They want to make sure companies not only have the experience, but that they also have delivered their products and got good ratings, product, services, and construction, and got good ratings on those product, services, and construction. So who decides if a subcontractor is responsible? In general, primes do. This is in FAR 9.104-4, right? However, the government can require a prime to submit evidence of a sub's responsibility. That is a unusual circumstance, is not the norm. So that's why we have a generally there, right? So primes decide if their subcontractors are worthy to be their subcontractors or not. However, on certain government contracts, sometimes related to medical supplies, or if there's an urgent requirement for something, or it's maybe a highly technical subcontracting issue or part of the contract, then government contracting officers can actually step in and say, no, you cannot use that sub. We reviewed their past performance and it's not up to par. You have to use a different sub. That can happen. It's not the normal, like I said, though. All right. Can a debarred prime be a sub? In general, you would think no. So FAR 9.405 spells this out again. Debarment is when maybe a prime contractor they've done something wrong, usually something related to something illegal, and they were no longer allowed to be a federal contractor. So the question that comes up sometimes is, can they still be a subcontractor to a federal contractor? And in general, the answer is no. Agencies, they're not supposed to solicit offers or award contracts or consent to subcontracts with these contractors unless there's a compelling reason to do so. There are some exceptions as we get to the 3rd bullet point here, but basically subcontracts under 35,000 is usually allowable unless there's some extenuating circumstance that won't allow it, or if it's commercial off-the-shelf items, because these are items, like I said, used all over the world and in various private sector contracts, and so the vendor is just supplying them. It shouldn't be an issue with the quality of the product or anything like that. So those are the exceptions to it. But in general, again, if you're debarred as a prime, you're probably not going to be hired as a sub in general. All right, why do prime subcontract? Why doesn't a prime just do the whole contract themselves? Why do they even need subcontractors, right? That comes up sometimes as well. Well, a subcontractor sometimes can be the expert. Let's take the example of maybe there's a prime contract for janitorial and yard maintenance services for a certain, let's say for the Marine Corps base. And so maybe a janitorial company has done this before on all these different bases, and so they can do that part, but they're not experts at the yard maintenance part of that contract. So they will subcontract to an established and well-known, and maybe one that has some good past performance, a yard maintenance company. So that's one of the reasons. It's kind of teaming up, trying to provide an answer or a solution to the customer's problems with a better and more efficient team. That's probably one of the big reasons. Subcontractors can also do things more efficiently, right? If you're an expert at something, there's no reason why the prime needs to become an expert at that, whatever it is. Then they just can hire your company. If you've got the procedures down, you know all the registrations and certifications that need to happen with whatever you're the expert at. So the prime can just hire you, and that's one of the reasons. It's also the subcontractors can help meet socioeconomic goals, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. But basically, like I said, the government, federal government wants to help make sure there's competition. They want to make sure there are a bunch of small businesses selling their products, services, and construction to the government. So they actually have goals, and the goal right now, I believe, is 23% of all federal contracts should go to small businesses. And then they divide those goals even further. So there's different set asides, like I talked about earlier about the HUBZone. If you're a HUBZone certified company, well, the government has a goal to award 3% of its contracts to HUBZones. And then there's a goal for woman-owned small businesses. I believe the goal is 5%. And then there's a goal for socially and economically disadvantaged businesses, otherwise known as 8A businesses. And that goal, I believe, is also 5%. And then the final goal is the service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. There's a 3% goal for that. So if you're a subcontractor with those certifications, as a woman-owned or an 8A or a HUBZone or a service disabled veteran, you can help the prime meet the goals for that, whatever department or agency they're selling their product, services, or construction to. So basically what this means is, if you, let's say there's a big project to build a building and you're going to supply all the furniture for that building as a subcontractor, but the prime is looking for HUBZone certified furniture vendors because it'll help them, as well as help the customer, which is the military base or whoever's purchasing that building, meet their socioeconomic goals. Then it might come down to the prime will, maybe there's 2 or 3 or 4 furniture vendors, but only one is HUBZone certified. The prime might go with the one that's HUBZone certified to meet those goals. So that's where those come into play. And then also they are required to, in certain types of contracts. And so basically this is from FAR 19.702. Any contract over the simplified acquisition threshold, which I believe is still 250. I'm not sure if that's changed or not. But I did some research earlier today, and it looks like it's still 250. And they got to agree that small businesses will have the maximum practical opportunity to participate. So there's also some rules in place. There's also larger contracts where subcontracting plans come into place, and we're going to talk about those as well coming up. So here's something that you can get online. You can just Google DoD Subcontracting Program fact sheet. And why do we care about DoD and their subcontracting? Well, if you want to be a federal subcontractor, right, a subcontractor to a prime on a federal project here on Guam, 99.5% of all those contracts coming out on Guam, those federal ones, are coming out of Department of Defense. Very few are for them. There are other, few $1 million here and there, but in general, the bulk of the $1 billion in federal contracting on Guam, over 900 million of probably 950 million of it comes from DoD. So we're really interested in what they're doing and how they're handling their subcontracting. So they have a great fact sheet. I think this is dated 2019, but it still applies. And you can download this. In fact, I have a copy of it, so I'll send it to everyone later this afternoon when I send out this PDF to everyone. But basically, large primes, or if it's not a small business set aside type work, large primes with contracts over 700,000 or 1.5 million for construction, they need to have these things known as subcontracting plans. And this is basically a plan letting the government know, hey, we expect to use X amount of subcontractors. and we're going to use X amount that are HUBZone certified, and X amount that are woman-owned certified, and X amount that are 8A certified, and X amount that are service-disabled vets. And they get graded on their plans when they're putting their bids in to compete for these projects. And then they need to stick to those plans. And if they deviate from those plans, they need to explain what's going on and why are they deviating from those plans. But so that's another reason to become a subcontractor and get those certifications, because it's required for some larger contracts. All right. Payments to subcontractors. This is always a big thing. Some companies don't want to become subcontractors because they're worried about how are they going to get paid. Well, FAR, kind of helps to ensure subcontractors get paid. I mean, nothing's 100%. And there are issues that pop up from time to time from primes not paying their subs or paying them late, things like that. And the FAR tries to help as much as it can. But remember, I didn't mention this earlier, but it's probably a good thing to know. When you're a subcontractor on a federal contract, let's say, right, you're a subcontractor to a prime who's working on a federal contract. You do not have a contract with the government. You have a contract with the prime. That's a big thing to distinguish, right? So the government really has no obligation to you there, and the prime even though the prime is responsible for the entire contract, the prime is the only one who has a contract with the government. The subs have contracts with the prime. So essentially those are private sector contracts, right? So, but the government can try to help, and that's why they add some things to the FAR to try to help the subs. Oh, by the way, that's known as privity of contract. So the feds have privity of contract with the prime with the federal government, but the subcontractors do not. So they can assure, or FAR 19.704 and as well as 52.219 say when there's subcontracting plans in place, sorry, looks like somebody's mic unmuted there for a sec. Thank you very much. So they want to assure that companies will pay their small businesses on time in accordance with the terms and conditions of the subcontract. And the primes are supposed to notify the contracting officer if they're paying a reduced or if they're paying late. And they got to give some reasons for that. So that's in the FAR. So that's kind of a little help to subcontractors to make sure they get paid. There's also another section and this refers to small business subcontractors. So this is 52.242-5. And again, with subcontracting plans, so these are the larger projects where subcontracting plans are required. So primes are supposed to notify their contracting officers within 14 days after a small business contractor was entitled to payment and the prime contractor made a reduced or untimely payment. So that connects to that previous clause. So it's kind of like, I know it seems like the primes are policing themselves, but this is kind of put in there to make sure that there's some recourse for the subcontractors. There's also FAR 52.232.27, which deals with the prompt payment for construction contracts. And even though it's a construction contract, it also has to do with service and material suppliers. So a contractor shall include in each of, so this is the prime, in their subcontract to the subcontractor, whether they're providing services, materials, construction supplies, whatever it is, they got to have clauses in those subcontracts that obligate the contractor to pay the subcontractor no later than 7 days from when the prime was paid. Now, is that happening all the time? I'm not sure. I hear all the time that subcontractors get these contracts say, well, you'll be paid in 30 days after we get paid. So I'm not sure why the prompt payment is not being included. It would depend if this FAR clause is included in that federal contract or not, I'm assuming. So, but maybe I can get some clarification on that later and get it out to you guys later this afternoon. There should be some kind of interest. If the contractor does not pay you on time, the prime should be paying some kind of interest, and this should flow down to all subs. So again, if this FAR clause is not included in the actual federal contract, which many times the subs don't see, So again, here's a little tip. If you're a subcontractor and you have a contract with the prime, try to get a copy of the actual full federal contract. And if this clause is in there, 52-32-27, then you actually, technically you're supposed to be paid within 7 days from when the prime gets paid. As long as you did everything in your contract with the prime, which is, you did everything on time, you went through their procedures of doing your invoicing, however it works. So that's good to know there. Late payments on prime. So if a prime is habitually paying their subs late, there's again a little recourse in there. It should ding them on their past performance for the prime. There should be a little, black check mark that, hey, we shouldn't rate their past performance high because we see that they constantly are reducing their payments to their subs or paying them untimely. And so there are some requirements in here. And so if it looks like when the prime is getting their annual evaluation or the evaluation at the end of their contract, and they see that this is going on, the government sees this is going on, they can ding them for that. So, all right. When it comes to subcontracting, now these rules here apply only to small business set-aside contracts. So let me take a little step back here. The rules we've been talking about mostly have been for larger contracts, so building a building, right? Anything over, I think it was $750,000, where subcontracting plans are required. These rules here, though, these are for contracts known as small business set-asides. So like I said, the government has a goal, right, to 23% of all contracts should go to small businesses. And so when they're setting aside something or saying, hey, you know what, we have a lawn maintenance contract coming out, we're going to put this out here shortly, we're going to make sure this is for small business only. That's known as a small business set-aside. Or we're going to say this is for woman-owned only. Well, then what that means is only a certified woman-owned small business can bid on that as a prime, right? So in those situations, those are known as small business set-aside contracts. So when that's happening, there are rules on the subcontracting for that, because what they don't want is, okay, let's go back to the yard maintenance. It's set aside for woman-owned. A woman-owned wins it, and then they 100% subcontract to a large business. Well, that kind of defeats the purpose of the entire contract, right? So there are limitations on these contracts on how much of a contract can be subcontracted. So when it comes, if it's a service and supplies small business set aside, then no more than half of it can be subcontracted to a firm that's not similarly situated. And that's the key word, similarly situated. So what that means is, if this was a woman-owned small business set aside, then the woman-owned small business prime that won it, they could subcontract up to 50% to basically anybody who's not woman-owned certified. But if they're subcontracting to another woman-owned small business certified contract, I mean, theoretically, they could subcontract 100% of it, right? I don't know if people ever do that. I don't think so. I don't think that's a wise thing to do, but they could. So that's what similarly situated. So it means the subcontractor has the same certifications and status as the prime contractor. So for general construction, that limit is 85%. And for specialty construction, it's 75%. So those are special situations when it comes to small business set-aside contracts. All right, so here's what probably most people want to hear: how to win subcontracts. So there's some little things you need to know here, some little tips that we're going to talk about, and we'll go to details on each of these three categories, basically. So know yourself. The big thing, most companies know what they do, and they know how well, or they think they know how well they do it, but you'd be surprised sometimes. So we'll talk about how you can make sure that the primes, as well as government agencies, know you as well, and things you need to do here. So know where to look. There's places you can go. There's databases. There's websites, networking opportunities, all kinds of things that can help you win subcontracts. And of course, knowing the prime. Not all primes are the same. Some primes you want to work for, some primes you don't. So you definitely want to know the prime before you even try to be a subcontractor for them. And so we'll talk about how you can do that in these next few slides coming up here. All right, sorry, just let me click that. All right. So know yourself, get your certifications, basically, get a DUNS number, right? So we have a workshop on these two things. In fact, next week, next Thursday, the webinar will be DUNS and SAM and how you basically can get started in federal contracting. But if you want to be a federal contractor, you need to get a DUNS number and you need to register your company in a database known as SAMS, the System for Award Management. DUNS is Data Universal Numbering System. That's what DUNS stands for. The DUNS numbers are going away. April, I believe, is when they're scheduled to go away. So just a few months from now, a couple months from now. However, you still need it. So if you're brand new to federal contracting and you want to start registering your business, you do, as of this moment, still need to get a DUNS number. Our DUNS numbers come from Australia, so it's not the same as the US system. So if you want to learn about how to do that, like I said, next week we'll be doing a webinar on that. If you can't wait till next week, just give us a call, shoot us an email, and let us know how we can, and we can help you get that DUNS number. All our information, contact information is on our website, guamptac.com. Once you get your DUNS number, you can register your company in SAM. SAM is basically a database of anybody who wants to be a federal contractor or even get a grant from the federal government. You need to register in SAM. So probably many of you, if you ever done the PPP loans and things like that, you probably had to get your company registered. You had to get a DUNS number at least, most likely. And so we'll show you how that registration process works and all the different sections of that SAM registration. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but it's not that difficult once you understand the different sections and how the process works. So we'll talk about all that next week at our 10 a.m. Thursday webinar. So get your DUNS number, register in SAM. And then as you're registering in SAM, there's something in there known as your SBA profile. I think in SAM, they call it the SBA supplemental pages. But in general, we call it the SBA profile. And what it does, it links to a different database that's run by the SBA. And that's where you can talk more about your small business, talk about maybe some special skills you have, some special certifications you have, maybe some special training, some special tools and equipment. You can put your past, not your past performance, you can put your experience in there. You can list all your various different completed jobs. It's basically a marketing profile, a marketing tool that you can set up. And it's great because once you do this, primes do look at this SBA profile, as well as contracting folks from the Department of Defense and other agencies. They'll look at this every now and then. So it's a great place to just market your company and let primes know about your company. Again, we will talk about this. We talk about this actually when we do our marketing to the federal government webinar, and I'm not sure if we're doing that in February or not, but look out for that. Certifications. So these are basically the 4 official certifications from the SBA. So HUBZone, like I mentioned, is something. So if you're a small business, and there's an easy way to figure that out, you just basically have to make sure your the number of employees or the annual sales of your company, annual revenue, don't exceed a certain threshold for it's something known as a NAICS code that corresponds to your company. And when you set up your SAM registration, it's all spelled out there, and you will pick codes, and then SAM will tell you if you're a small business in that code or not. Just 99% of the businesses on Guam are small businesses. In fact, we're very, very small. For example, the threshold, if you're a construction business, I believe is 39 million or maybe 38.5 million. So that means if you're doing less than that per year in sales and revenue, you're a small business. For us on Guam, we might look at that number and go, wow, that's actually pretty big. But it's based on US standards across the country. So just suffice it to say, 99% of all the businesses on Guam are going to fall in the small business category. So these are certifications that are available for small businesses. These 4 certifications right here. HUBZone, again, is based on physical location. All of Guam, all the CNMI are in a HUBZone. So it's pretty easy to get. I put some links here where you can go to the SBA website and read about it, but just know Guam PTAC, we're here to help. We can help you with all these certifications. We've done this for many other companies already. The woman-owned, WOSB is woman-owned small business. EDWOSB is economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business. So there's 2 different categories you can get. But basic requirements, and it's not this simple, but I had to make it a little simple to fit on the slide here. But you got to be owned and operated by women, right? And usually it's unconditional ownership, and there's a bunch of different things that come into play. For the ED, the economic disadvantage, there are some requirements on how much in assets, dollar value of assets, and net worth the woman owner or women owners can have. So that comes into play there. 8A is basically named for the Small Business Act, Section 8A. It's also sometimes called the disadvantaged business certification, small disadvantaged business. But basically, businesses that are owned and operated by socially, economically disadvantaged individuals. So social disadvantage is basically anybody who falls into a certain category, and the categories are listed, and it basically Pacific Islanders, American Indians, African Americans, all those categories are considered automatically socially disadvantaged. So, and then economic disadvantage, that you need to, again, follow some thresholds of net worth and total assets that you own. And if you can come in under those thresholds, then you will be considered economic disadvantage, and you could probably apply for this program. We do webinars on all three of these, actually all four of these. Let me get to the MPP here. MPP is the Mentor Protege program. So this is the Small Business Mentor Protege program, but it basically allows a small business to team up with a large business, and that team still be eligible to compete for small business contracts. So remember those small business set-aside contracts, usually, actually for small business set-aside contracts, the prime has to be a small business, right? But if they're part of an MPP, a Mentor Protege program, and it's been approved by SBA, that team of small and large business actually can still go after those contracts, even though there's a large business involved. And the reason for that is this is a program that it's a business development program. It allows a large business to help a small business develop and grow. So if you want to participate in any of these programs and get these certifications, we can assist you with that. Again, the links are all here where you can read more about it. And on Guam, we have businesses competing or that have these certifications. By far the most certification, or HUBZone is by far the easier, and over 150 plus companies on Guam have HUBZone certifications. I believe we have about 5 or 6 that have the woman-owned. There are about 6 8As on Guam, not including the Alaskan Native companies that are here, but there are 6 actually Guam-based 8A companies. And there's maybe 4 companies participating in the Mentor Protege program. So there's a lot of room for growth. I mean, we have hundreds of companies on Guam that could do this stuff. It's just they need to get involved in federal contracting to take advantage of this. So more about knowing yourself, core competencies. This is a big thing always is, again, offer something uniquely good. There's a lot of competition in federal contracting, especially at the subcontracting level. There are a lot of subcontractors who offer the same products and same services, or I can't say same, similar products, similar services, and similar construction. So try to specialize in something, unique, something that makes you different. Try to figure out what it is that makes you different. Maybe you have an air conditioning business and all your employees have a certain certification that other air conditioning businesses don't have. Whatever it is, maybe you have the most locations. Maybe you have the best, maybe you have the most of the spare parts, more spare parts than other companies. Whatever it is, try to figure out what makes you different and market that, capitalize on that. Figure out who your target market is. When it comes to federal contracting, like I said, we're really concerned about DoD because they do most of the federal contracting out here. So if you're targeting primes, find out which primes are what contracts they have, and we'll get to that shortly here, and how you can fit in and help those primes. And then figure out, why do customers choose you? The great way to do that is to do a questionnaire. Every time you finish a project, anytime you complete a contract, have the customer grade you. That is a great thing to do, because as you move up in federal contracting, starting as a sub, but then once you become a prime, the federal government will be grading you on every contract you complete. So why not get in the habit of doing that in the private sector as well? Also, that will give you a bunch of past performance, because you'll not only now have the experience, but now you'll actually have the grades that you can share with when you get into federal contract. So I kind of jumped ahead here, but past performance, that's what we're talking about. Primes want to work with proven subcontractors, so keep a file of all your past performance questionnaires, right? If you want a sample questionnaire, I have this form PPQ-0. This is PPQ stands for past performance questionnaire that the military uses, DoD uses, other agency uses as well. So I'll send you a copy of this. We'll take a look at it when I'm done with the presentation here. But, you know, keep a file of all this because this is your past performance, right? This is where you're graded. You have your customers grade you. And then update your SBA profile with the same data. That's that marketing website when you're registering in SAM, and it'll link to SBA. You can market your company. Make sure the contacts and phone numbers are still valid. So if you're going to list something on a past performance questionnaire, like you want to bid on something for the military when you finally become a prime, make sure the contact and phone numbers for those past performance that you're saying, I did a project, let's just say I did a project for company A and they graded me with an exceptional. Well, make sure the contact and phone numbers are there, and so the government can contact, or even the prime can contact your customers and say, is that true? Did you grade them exceptional? Because that's what they're going to do. And then make sure your past performance is relative to the subcontract you're trying to get. So if you're working with a prime and they want to see, hey, do you have any past performance with this yard maintenance? And let's say you do yard maintenance and I don't know, all kinds of other things, only include the past performance related to yard maintenance when you're submitting documentation. All right, here's just some more marketing tips when it comes to working with primes. You definitely want to go and know the primes estimators and small business liaisons, large businesses, the Cortex of the world, the Black Constructions, the Hensel Phelps, they will have these people. They will have small business departments, basically. And so get to know them, get to know the estimators. If you're selling products, let's say, heavy equipment parts and things like that, it's probably good to know the people in the field, the shop foreman and all that, right? Because they know what the parts they need and they can tell the buyers in that company where to go and look and buy from. So those are the people so not necessarily knowing the head of the company is a good thing. It's sometimes good to know the people in the field who are doing the work. Have a website. It's amazing to me that I still see some primes, usually small business primes, that really don't have a website, and it blows my mind in this day and age. But you need a website. It's a great place where contracting officers, contracting specialists, prime contractors go and check out your company. And it's so easy. It's just, they don't really cost anything. You can have an informational website, 1 or 2 or 3 pages, and just talk about what your company does and how well you've done these things. And you can have lots of pictures and testimonials from your customers. So it's just a great way to market and advertise your company for a very, very low price, and sometimes even free. So have a logo, stick it everywhere, make sure your company vehicles, uniforms, whatever you want to do, standardized company vehicles. These are small things but they create impressions. If you see vehicles from a company driving down the road and they're all beat up and old and dented and rusted, you might think, wow, that company doesn't really care about the image they're projecting, right? However, you see a company, all their vehicles are always clean and shiny and neat, and you think, well, okay, these guys take pride in their work, right? So do the same thing with your company. Keep the job site clean. Uniforms are always good. Have an advertising budget. You need to advertise. That's the way it is in this day and age. In fact, when times are hard, most people, the first thing they cut is their advertising budget. But if you go to any business school or take any marketing 101 class, you'll know that's probably the time you want to double your advertising budget when times are hard. Keep your testimonials handy, right? Like that kind of ties in with the slide earlier. You want to make sure you have those ready and at hand, because who knows who's going to ask for it. Survey your customers. I mentioned that already. Maintain a capability statement. When we do our marketing webinar, we talk about a capability statement. But basically, a capability statement is a one-page business card for your business, right? We all walk around with business cards that tell people about us and what we do in the company, because it'll have our name on the card, it'll have our title on the card, and it might have maybe our phone number, as well as the address of the company and our website, but it doesn't really tell people what our company does. So a capability statement does that. It tells people, and the important people like contracting officers, contracting specialists, and primes, and buyers for primes, right? It tells them what we do, what our company does. You'll have all your official certifications listed on there. You'll have your DUNS number listed on there. When you're done registering in SAM, you're issued something known as a CAGE code, a commercial and government entity code. That CAGE code will be on your capability statement. You can have your past performance listed on there. So it's just a marketing tool, and we'll talk all about that when we do our Marketing the Federal Government webinar. But you should have one of those when you're trying to be a subcontractor for a prime. So here we go, single one-page document. And this is what a capability statement is. Basically, it has your reps and certs, your core competencies. What are you good at? Those unique things you're trying to figure out in your past performance. Great marketing tool. All right, where can you find out about primes and competitors? Well, one place you can check is Department of Defense. They have a website, defense.gov, and I put a link here. Every day they announce any contract that's over 7 million or more, 5 p.m. every business day. You can actually sign up and register your email address and just get this in your inbox every morning, because that's 5 p.m. Eastern, which I believe is 8 a.m. Guam time. And so this is great because it lists all the contracts awarded in the Department of Defense, you know, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and you can see who's winning what. All right, so that's a great place to see what primes and maybe your competitors in there. So anything over 7 million is listed there. You can also check contract opportunities. So if you're interested, and now these are for prime contractors, you can go to sam.gov, check the contract opportunities section, do a little Guam, put Guam in the search box you see down there, and it'll show you every opportunity with the word Guam in it. Now, I know this presentation is for subcontractors, so subcontractors can benefit sometimes when they look at these opportunities and they see, oh, look, there's a yard maintenance opportunity. Sometimes there'll be something known as an interested vendors list. Now, it's up to the contracting folks if they want to include that interested vendors list or not. It's not required by law or anything. But if it's there, you can see other primes and other or possible subcontractors, possible competitors, even possible teaming partners that have expressed an interest and signed up on the interested vendors list. So that's something you can look at. Excuse me. You can also go to usaspending.gov. This is a great place to basically just type in Guam as a keyword search, and you can see I just did this morning, and there was 101,000 contracts because I didn't put any date limitations. But basically, USA Spending is a database of government contracts, government grants, direct payments, any spending from the US government over the last 10 years. So I put in Guam, and there was 101,000 contracts over the last 10 years. And then I sorted it by action date, which you can see on the bottom right there. And then it just starts listing the contracts in date order. So the first one on the list there is Cornerstone Valuation. And so if I click that award ID, I could see the amount of the contract. I could see what the contract was for. And so it gives you an idea of who's winning what. And again, this helps to know if these are primes you want to work with or maybe team up with. You know, subcontractors can team up and become primes themselves. So that's all possible. So just know, though, one big caveat with the USA Spending, Department of Defense, and we're always interested in Department of Defense, right? They are allowed to withhold their data from this website for up to 90 days. So if you want to see the DoD contracts that were won yesterday, you're probably not going to see that on usaspending.gov. You'll only see the ones that are $7 million or more posted on the defense.gov website. And then sometimes there'll be some press releases that NAVFAC does, NAVFAC Marianas and NAVFAC Pacific, NAVFAC Hawaii, related to some spending. But in general, it's held for 90 days. So right now, you're probably going to start seeing where it's January. So October stuff will be starting to be released in USA Spending. So just know that little caveat for DoD contracts. So that tells you right now that Cornerstone Valuation contract is probably not a DoD contract. That M80 Systems one, I know that one is for I believe they are a GSA. They're on a GSA schedule doing work in Hawaii for a lot of different things. So, okay. Also check with us, PTAC, we're here to help. So we know how to use these databases. And if you have a particular search, hey, I want to know what kind of, I don't know, how many yard maintenance contracts were set aside for HUBZone companies in the last 5 years. We can help you do that search. We know how to use these databases, and we can help narrow things down for you. Networking is a great way. You know, you can have all the certifications in the world. You can have all your paperwork, all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, but you need to know people. That's a big, big thing with a government contract, with any type of contracting, with any type of business. Networking is key. You need to know people. Very, very rare that a one-person business is that successful. There really need to be some teaming up going on. You need to be subcontracting to primes. You need to know these people. So join these organizations. These are not all of them, by the way. These are just some I found on the internet. So there's a ton of organizations out there. Guam Chamber, Guam Contractors Association, SAMI for the American Military Engineers. There's actually an American Subcontractors Association. I have no idea if they help with stuff on Guam or not. Guam Women's Chamber. There's a National Association of Women in Construction, GHRA, the Hotel and Restaurant Association. There's a Chinese chamber. I believe there's a Korean chamber as well. So there's all kinds of organizations you can join and network and try to connect with the people that'll help your subcontracting grow and eventually become a prime yourself. Most primes have websites. So again, these are not all the primes on Guam. This is just 5 that I randomly picked. So you can go to these websites, and why I'm showing you this is because if you want to be a sub for these companies, most primes on their website will have a way to register for subcontractors to register and certain information they want from subcontractors, and you'll have to input that on their website. And they're not all the same. They're not all standardized. So here's some links if you want to be subcontractors for these companies. You can go to these links, but no means are we advocating for just these companies. There are tons of other companies out there. But just know that most primes have websites for their subcontractors that want to register as subcontractors. And usually they require you to register. Some bidding tips. Even though you're not the prime, you want to be a subcontractor, you should understand what the government wants from the prime, right? So again, you really want to get that main contract. You want to be able to see the larger contract and see what the prime is supposed to be doing for the government agency, and that way you know how your section, how your portion, how your subcontract fits in. And of course, understand every detail of your subcontract, SOW, which is the scope of work. You want to know that. You're going to use the prime's bid form. This is when the prime's bidding. Tell the prime what sections your bid covers. So when you're submitting a bid to a prime contractor, you obviously use their form. Tell them what you're bidding on. Some primes, require you bid on everything. Some don't. So it all depends on the prime you're working with. So if you don't want to bid on everything that they're looking for, the prime's looking for, you tell them just what part you want to cover. Limit the number of exclusions. So some, that goes back to what part your bid's covering. If a prime is looking for, a sub that can do everything that they want for this certain subcontract, I'm sure the prime would rather go with one that can do it all versus 2 or 3 that are going to do various sections of the subcontract. So those would be exclusions. When you tell a sub, we're going to do the janitorial part of this subcontract, but we're not going to do the lawn care part. Well, that would be an exclusion. So you want to limit that. Keep it as low as, hopefully you can do everything, right? And so, better than having an exclusion and telling the prime that we're not going to do this portion. It's better to you as a sub, just team up with another sub and just say, yeah, we're going to do this portion. Highlight items that add value beyond the scope of work. So Maybe the prime wants you to do something and you know you can do it better than what they're suggesting in their scope of work. Highlight what you can do to make it better. And then, of course, submit your bid on time, just like the federal government requires the prime to submit their bid on time. You want to do the same thing to your prime. Make sure you submit everything on time. Then follow up to see if you won or lost. Now, do not hound the prime. Don't call them every hour, every minute, every day to find out what's going on. But follow up in a reasonable amount of time. And I know it's hard. Well, what's reasonable? It depends. It depends on the complexity of the subcontract. So, if it's something that's very simple, like providing a product, maybe call them up in 2 or 3 days. If it's a service or something that is a little more technical and requires the primes to review labor plans and things like that, well, then give them a couple weeks maybe to figure it out. So, but just the key here is not to become a pain, right? Just follow up in a reasonable amount of time. When you're working with a prime, you should know the answer to these questions. What's their paperwork process? Especially if you win a contract, you want to know that beforehand. What are your payment options? Is the prime going to pay you with a credit card? Are they going to write you a check? Are they going to pay you in cash? Is it going to be direct deposit? You want to know all those things. Do you need to have the special tools for the contract, or are the prime going to provide that for you? Do you need to have an office on site? Are you going to be able to use the prime's office? Whatever it is, right? Are there special requirements for site access? You want to know about all these things, because all these things can lead to different costs when you're preparing your proposal on your subcontract. What's the quality control and inspection procedures? This is not just construction. This comes into play with services as well. So how are you going to change if there's a change in scope and overtime? How's that going to be handled? If a contract is canceled, will you still be paid for what you've done? These are all things you need to consider when reviewing the contract that you're about to sign with your prime. What are the warranty procedures? Insurance and bonding, that's usually a big one, right? Are you going to fall under the prime's bond, or are you going to have your own bond? So just some things to think about when you're thinking about becoming a subcontractor to a prime. And I think we're going to end here on this quote right here. This is from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and it basically says, you're not going to get a contract just because you're small business or minority or woman owner or some other category. The big things are you got to have a good quality product or service, and you got to provide it on time and at a competitive price. Those are the 3 key things always, right? Of course, these certifications and category certifications like woman-owned, service-disabled veteran, they can help, but they're not a guarantee of being selected as a subcontractor on a prime for a prime contract. So make sure you're providing good quality products or services. You're doing it on time. So basically, you're following the scope of work, you're following the schedule, and you're doing it at the price that you guys agreed upon. That'll make everything great. All right, I'm going to stop. Let me go to one more slide here. This is our contact information. So all our email addresses and phone numbers are here. And like I said, I'm going to send everyone a copy of this. We have a Facebook page as well. And here's our website, guamptac.com. But I want to stop and share a couple things with you that I'm going to send to you later today. So let me go to those PDFs. So this is the Department of Defense subcontracting program. So they have a basics of subcontracting. This is the newest one I could find. I don't think there's an updated one yet. But this is where they talk about first they start with the regulatory requirements, what's required of subcontractors and all the different rules and regulations that come into play. Then they talk about the subcontracting plans, which we mentioned. That's, contracts over a certain amount have to have subcontracting plans. And then they talk about things you can do. Let's go out of the subcontracting plans here. Oops, let me see here. Where is it? So they have links to different things here, checklists and things like this, overview, contracts overview. Some of these links might be out of date, like for FedBizOps, there is no more FedBizOps, right? That was replaced. It's part of SAM.gov now. So hopefully they're going to put out a new version of this document soon. Women-owned is no longer self-certified. It's an official certification. So, and small disadvantaged business under the 8A program, basically that's what that is an official certification. It's not a self-certification. So hopefully this will get updated. But the point here was just to show you that there is a document, there's a little PDF you can get that helps with subcontracting for Department of Defense. And then like I mentioned earlier about you want to make sure every time you complete a project, complete a contract, have your customers grade you. I'll send you a copy of this. You can tweak it to use it however you want. But this is something you can use to have your clients, your customers grade you. You can send them this right here. Here's how we want to be graded. Here's the definitions. And then here's what you, client, customer, here's how you can grade us, right? And then keep these on file. And this is now a record of your past performance. Because like I said earlier, when you become a prime contractor, this is what the government will do to you. They will be grading you and storing that data. So, all right, just wanted to share that with everyone. And now I'm going to open up to questions. Anybody have any questions? Marichu, you have a question? No.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Are you ready? I have a question.
Sure.
You're from
Rob, yes.
My name is actually Teddy. There's two of us here.
Okay.
Japan bus line. Good morning.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to know, how can we see if a prime gave a fair score on our performance?
That's a great question.
Because our industry is competitive. We one day might be a prime or want to be a prime,
right.
And having a poor score can hurt that,
Correct. Yeah, I'm not sure. So the scores, like I said, come from the government grading the prime.
Right.
It's up to the primes if they want to grade their subcontractors. So I'm not even sure if all primes are doing it.
Right.
You should be doing it, and you should be, hopefully you have a good relationship with your prime, and they're going to give you a copy of that score, and they should give you some justification of how they arrived at that score.
Okay. Appreciate that. So there's actually no way of website going where they actually scored us.
No, because like I said, remember, if you're a sub, you have a contract with a prime. That's basically a private sector contract. It's not a government contract.
Yeah. That's pretty much. Wait, I got one more.
Sure. Great.
I got another question. So, you know how there's an amount for the bid? Is there a bid amount where they don't need to is there an amount that the government gives out where you don't need a bid and they just give it out to whoever they want?
Yeah, I think.
You know how you say there's a 100-some thousand and then they subcontract. Is there a certain amount where they don't need a bid and they can give it to anybody?
Yeah, so there's something known as the micro purchase threshold. And that's where the government can basically walk in with their government credit cards. And
oh, is that the one?
Yeah, and I forget where that's set at, I believe, and probably Norma can correct me if I'm wrong here. I think it was set at 3,500, but it might be up to 10,000 now. I'm not sure.
So they don't need to bid it. They can just
something like that. Yeah, they can just walk in with a credit card and buy it from your establishment, right?
From any establishment outside that.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that, sir.
Sure. Was that correct there, Norma?
I know the threshold for services is up to 2,500 for government credit card, and then I'm sorry. I think it's construction, right?
I'm not sure. You're fading out there.
And it's 33,000. Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay. For services and construction, I think it's up to 2,500, and then supplies is up to 3,000.
Also, it was not raised to 10,000. I thought there was like a deviation memo where they allowed it to go up to 10,000.
Yeah, Boris, I heard 10,000 somewhere down the line. So Norma, it could be 10 grand something somewhere, because that's what I heard too.
Okay, unless
It's
it's
10 grand.
for a government purchase card.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
Is that not true or no?
It could be, I just haven't, I don't recall reading that.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So basically the answer is there is something known as the micro purchase threshold, and that's what allows the government to buy things without putting it out to bid. Right. There's actually a whole another thing we didn't even talk about. There is a hierarchy of purchasing, and bidding is not at the top of the hierarchy, but that's for a whole different webinar. So, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Hi, Boris. This is Joanna Sablon.
Hey, Joanna.
Hi. So in regards to the past performance questionnaire that you recommend that our prime completes at the end of the project. So we're getting ready to bid on a project that requires this form to be filled out. So does this form need to be filled out every single time by the same prime contractor whenever we submit a bid using this form, or do they just complete it once and we use that as an attachment to the proposal that we're submitting?
So, and yeah, none of that's required from prime to sub. So if you're the sub and you completed your portion of the work and you want your prime to evaluate you, you can give them that and have them evaluate you. Now,
So we're bidding on a project that we're actually going to come in. We're looking to come in as a prime. So we need this form to be filled out by our previous prime, where we were a sub.
right, your customer basically, yeah. Yep.
So do they just fill this out once and then we can use that for every single RFQ that we respond to? They don't need to fill it out every single time we're going to submit for every single project that
Yeah, I don't know. I see what you're saying. I'm not sure. I mean, my guess would be, there's no date on that. And the dates usually come into play when you want your past performance should be within the last 3 years or the last 5 years or something like that. So I think it should be fine to use a form on different projects. That's what you're asking? So you're saying, yeah, you don't have to put it out every single time. I know the solicitation has specific forms attached to the solicitation. You might have to use that specific form. There might be different headers and different language in there. I'm not sure.
Well, there is a section where they do have to date the past performance questionnaire.
Yeah.
So just wondering, I mean, I know there's usually that 5-year period that you would be submitting for past performance. And so I was just wondering, every time we're going to submit as a prime requiring past performance questionnaire, does that same company do we have to send that questionnaire to the company every single time and have them date it for the current year? No.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. I'm not quite sure on that.
Okay.
I'll put it in the email that when I send out later today.
Thank you.
Everybody. Okay. Any other questions out there? Norma.
So just for clarification or confirmation, so it is 10K for supply and equipment.
Okay.
The micro purchase threshold.
So it is 10,000. Is that services too, or?
No, services is still at 2,500.
Okay.
And construction is 2,000. So it's just supplies and equipment.
Okay.
Right.
Thanks, Norma. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Norma.
Any other questions? All right, if there are no further questions, I'll make sure to get those answers out to you guys, as well as a copy of the webinar. And please join us next week as we talk about getting a DUNS number and registering in SAM. If you know any small businesses out there that are just getting started, because this is one of the first 2 requirements to be a federal contractor as well as a subcontractor, please let them know about the webinar. And that's it. Thanks for joining us, everyone, today.
To fill out something after. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yeah, what's going on next week?
And Frank, just to let you know, we're not going to have the meeting tomorrow. You're on mute.